Campfire myths. The night's cycle had fallen hard on forward base Icaros, casting long shadows over the ridgeline that bordered the Vorrak zone. The flickering blue of thermal lamps and the low hum of shield generators gave the alien outpost a surreal glow, like some spectral hive clinging to survival. Inside Mess Tent 3, a group of off-duty soldiers crowded around a battered heater core, steam rising from their mugs of SynCF. They were from half a dozen species: Qatari, Vorrak, Yulari, and a smattering of other coalition races. But tonight, they were united by two things: boredom and bravado. Private Jurl, a young Vorrak fresh from training orbit, was wide-eyed and shivering despite his thermal skin layer. His chitinous fingers gripped the mug like it held the secrets of the cosmos. "You ever seen one?" he asked, voice buzzing with curiosity. "Seen what?" barked Sergeant Creel, a Yulari with half a face of scarred scale and the other half permanently sneering. "Spit out, rookie." "A Terran. A human. I mean, for real." The circle of soldiers chuckled. A few rolled their eyes. "Humans?" Creel scoffed. "You've been reading those data burst fables again, haven't you? The ones with the Terran ghosts and blood-drinking berserkers." Jurl shrugged. "It's not just stories. There are combat logs. Classified ones. The rumors say they say they eat their wounded." Creel cut in, grinning. "They say they can't be stunned, can't be broken, and bleed acid like some kind of horror hollow." Another wave of laughter rippled through the tent. Commander Growlthek leaned back in a chair at the far end, arms crossed. The Qatari officer had been silent until now. His plated hide caught the lamplight like obsidian armor. "Ridiculous," he rumbled. "Humans are organic. Weak. Short-lived. Their planet barely registers on our development charts. Most of their species still believes in gods." That drew more laughter, mocking, sharp, and cruel. "But they fought the Vorrak and lived," Jurl said quietly. "Some of them anyway." Growlthek narrowed his four eyes. "A statistical anomaly. Perhaps some minor strategic advantage. But those stories? Superstition. No single organic can take down a Vorrak drone unit alone." "They say one did," Jurl murmured, glancing around as if the truth might be listening. "They call him the Specter. Black armor, red visor, no emotion. He just appears, ends battles, then vanishes." Creel chuckled, waving a claw dismissively. "I've heard that one. Death in a helmet. Probably just three humans stitched together in a mech suit. You want truth, rookie? Real truth? The humans are extinct from their own recklessness. Probably blew up their own moon trying to cook breakfast." Another round of laughter, but Jurl wasn't laughing. He stared into his cup. Outside, the wind picked up, cold, high, and sharp. The Vorrak zone lay just beyond those hills. And the Vorrak didn't joke. They didn't speak. They consumed. A sharp tone echoed through the base, cutting the mood like a blade. "Attention. Incoming transport arriving at Bay 2. Coalition high-priority personnel inbound." The soldiers perked up. Visitors this far out were rare. High priority? That was almost unheard of. Growlthek stood slowly, something unreadable flickering in his gaze. "Looks like Command decided to grace us with an inspection." Creel stood too, stretching. "Hope they brought real food. Or maybe more myths to entertain the rookie." Jurl followed them out, glancing back once at the heater core's dying light. Outside, floodlights stabbed through the darkness. A sleek black dropship was descending, its hull scorched and angular. No standard markings, no unit insignia. Silent, heavy, unwelcoming. The ramp hissed down. What emerged was not what anyone expected. He was average size for a humanoid, clad in matte black powered armor, dented and scorched, with a single red slit across the helmet, just like the stories. The symbol on his chest wasn't Coalition. It was older, Earthborn. Behind him hovered a slim AI drone marked Mythos. The figure paused at the foot of the ramp, surveying the camp like a ghost haunting a battlefield. No one spoke. Jurl felt his throat dry out. His mind clutched for logic, for explanation, but found only memory. A phrase from the myths. "The last man you see before the end is never just a man." The Specter had arrived. And tomorrow, They'd march into hell with him. The arrival of the legend. The next morning broke gray and wind-bitten, with the sun barely cutting through the ash-filtered sky. The base was unusually quiet, even tense. Word had spread like wildfire. The Specter was real, and he had landed. Inside the command tent, Commander Gralthek stood reviewing terrain scans of the Vorrak front. But his eyes weren't on the maps. They kept flicking to the center of the tent, where General Elias Drake stood silently, helmet off, sipping what passed for coffee. A jagged scar ran from his left temple to his jaw. His eyes were the color of worn steel, dead calm, but impossibly alert. He didn't speak much. He didn't need to. A low hum drifted in from the corner. Mythos, the hovering AI orb, its surface rippling with faint holographic data. It hovered near Elias like a watchful hawk. "You're not what I expected," Gralthek finally said, keeping his tone neutral. Elias turned slightly. "No one ever is." Creel, leaning by the map table, chuckled. "So it's true then? You're the one from the vids?" "The red-eye death." Elias didn't respond. Mythos answered instead. General Drake served in 72 active combat zones across 3 campaigns, credited with 48 solo mission completions against Vorrak swarm hives. His presence was classified to preserve coalition morale and fear stability. "Fear stability?" Creel echoed. Mythos rotated smoothly. If the other races knew what humans were truly capable of, panic might outweigh diplomacy. Gralthek crossed his arms. "So the myths were propaganda?" "No," Elias said quietly. "They were containment." That silenced the room. Outside, the base buzzed with hushed energy. Soldiers peeked from behind crates, murmuring in low tones as Elias passed. Most had only ever heard the stories. The human who didn't sleep, the soldier who kept fighting even when half his body was gone, the man who walked into a Vorrak nest alone and came out dragging their queen's corpse. Jurl stood near the armory gate, eyes locked on the human legend. He felt his throat tighten as Elias paused, locking eyes with him. The human gave a brief nod, not of command, but recognition. Jurl swallowed hard. There was something in those eyes that machines and tactics couldn't explain. Later, in the briefing dome, Elias stood before a large map projection. Dozens of officers from different species watched, silent. He pointed to a red cluster blinking violently on the map. "The Vorrak are shifting their swarm hives here. They're building toward a critical mass. When that happens, they'll breach every front line on this sector. There'll be no fallback, no safe zones, just death." Gralthek frowned. "We've seen troop movements, but nothing this concentrated." "You weren't supposed to," Elias said. "They learned from us. They've been using old Terran war doctrines, deception, misdirection, adaptive timing. They're not mindless anymore." The room grew colder. Creel spoke up. "And how exactly do you know this, General?" Elias turned to Mythos. The AI projected a fragment of a video, grainy, low-light footage. Dozens of Vorrak swarms moving in complete synchronicity. Too precise, too clean. "We hacked a Dead Hive synaptic core last month. What we found wasn't Vorrak programming. It was us. They're studying human behavior. Tactical archives, even pre-space war doctrine. They're mimicking fearlessness, efficiency, and the only thing they haven't figured out is madness." "Madness?" Jurl echoed quietly from back. Elias gave a faint smile. "Humans don't always fight to win. Sometimes we fight because there's nothing else left. That kind of desperation, you can't program it. You can't replicate it. And they know that. So they've changed tactics. They don't want to defeat us. They want to replace us." He looked around the room, letting the words settle like dust. "That's why I'm here. Not because I'm some myth, but because I've seen what's coming. And I'm the only one who's lived through it." Gralthek's voice was low, wary. "So what's the plan?" "We fight like humans," Elias said. "Small, fast, unpredictable. We strike their nerve cluster at 0 hour, before they reach swarm threshold. No coordinated defense. Just chaos. Guerrilla warfare, shock tactics, old-school brutality. We remind them why the Terran Specter haunted their ancestors." There was silence, then a quiet murmur of agreement. Even the skeptics weren't scoffing now. As the officers dispersed, Jurl hesitated, then approached. "General," Elias looked down at him. Jurl squared his shoulders. "Are you really everything they say you are?" Elias leaned in, voice just above a whisper. "Kid, I'm not half of what they say. I'm worse." He walked off, leaving Jurl staring after him, eyes wide, heart pounding. The Vorrak offensive. The Vorrak came at dusk. It started as a tremor, barely noticeable at first, like the ground was holding its breath. Then came the hum, low and resonant, spreading like a storm across the ridgeline. The shield generators screamed a moment later as motion alarms blared to life across forward base Icaros. Vorrak swarm breach detected. All personnel to combat stations. Gralthek burst into the command tent. "They're early. We had 3 more days." "No," Elias said, already strapping on his black armor. "We were late." Outside, panic bloomed in the chaos. Clouds of dust rolled over the hilltops as thousands of Vorrak skittered across the rocks, spike-limbed, armored, eyes glowing like coals. They moved in terrifying unity, not a wild charge, but a cold, precise advance. Creel barked orders from the wall as explosions lit up the horizon. "Get the artillery online. Lock fire lanes. Someone wake the Yulari gunners." Jurl ran with his squad toward the east barricade, heart hammering, weapons shaking in his claws. He had trained for this. Simulations, drills, VR war rooms. But nothing prepared him for the reality. The noise, the stink, the way the sky looked like it was bleeding. A shriek tore through the clouds as the Vorrak launched shock pods, biological artillery that exploded on impact, sending acid and fire in every direction. The first landed in the motor pool. Half a dozen soldiers were vaporized before they could scream. Jurl dove behind a metal barricade just as his sergeant took a spike through the chest. The Vorrak didn't stop. They never did. In the center of the chaos, Elias dropped from the command tower like a thunderbolt. He landed between squads, armor plates flexing, visor glowing blood red. In his hands, an ancient Terran shotgun and a monoblade, both humming with power. He didn't give orders. He moved. Where he walked, Vorrak fell. He carved through them in short bursts. Blast, slash, dodge, repeat. Every move surgical. Every action purposeful. He didn't waste bullets. He didn't waste time. "Follow the human," someone shouted. "Rally on Drake." Alien soldiers surged behind him. The chaos coalesced into direction, and direction into fury. Gralthek fought his way to Elias's flank, plasma rifle glowing hot. "You're insane, Terran." Elias grinned beneath his visor. "Told you. Madness is part of the plan. Overcoms, Mythos coordinated strikes. Target bionodes exposed. Strike zone gamma in 10. Prepare detonations." Creel roared from a ridge, firing down into the swarm. "That's it. Make the bugs eat dirt." Jurl found himself moving without thinking, sticking close to Elias. The Specter's presence was a gravity field of confidence, and in that field, fear couldn't take root. But the Vorrak adapted. They began to split, surrounding Elias's group with pincer formations, using terrain cover. "Smarter. Faster. We're being boxed in," Gralthek shouted. "Then we break the box," Elias growled. He turned to Jurl. "You want to prove those stories true?" Jurl blinked. I'm not. You've got the eyes. You've seen the now. It's real. So pick a direction and make it yours." Jurl nodded, suddenly alive with adrenaline. He rallied his remaining squad and charged the left flank, screaming, emptying his clip into a Vorrak warrior's chest. The beast crumpled. Another followed, then another. Somewhere in the back of his mind, a voice said, "I'm doing it. I'm part of the myth." Mythos's voice cut in again. "Critical mass will breach east wall in 90 seconds. Recommend tactical detonation of forward depot." Elias looked at the base, then at Creel. "Can you do it?" Creel spat blood. "I've been wanting to blow that depot since I got here." He charged in, Vorrak at his heels, planting charges with mechanical speed. The swarm closed on him as he stood atop the structure, arms raised, laughing. "Tell the rookie I didn't die sitting down. The explosion split the sky. Half the Vorrak swarm disintegrated. The other half scattered. Silence followed, broken only by crackling fires and distant screeches. Hours later, smoke hung over what remained of forward base Icaros. Bodies, alien and Vorrak, littered the field. But the line had held. Gralthek limped past the wreckage, finding Elias sitting on a crate, helmet off, blood smeared across his face. "You were right," the Qatari muttered. "Madness. That's the human weapon." Elias didn't look up. "No, it's grief. It just looks like madness when we make it useful." Behind them, Jurl stood over Creel's remains. The myth had taken flesh, and it had bled, the truth beyond the myths. 2 days after the battle, the fires still smoldered. Forward base Icaros had held, but at a cost. The wounded lay under triage shelters, the dead buried under rocks marked with shattered weapons. The Vorrak swarm had retreated into the wastes, wounded, not broken. Everyone knew they'd return, but the soldiers walked taller now, not out of pride, but because they had seen what legends looked like, and survived beside one. In the infirmary, Jurl sat beside a flickering heater, his arm in a cast, eyes sunken with exhaustion. The camp was quieter now. Less laughter, less skepticism. The myths had been burned into truth by plasma and blood. General Elias Drake sat across from him, helmet on the floor, gaze steady. "You fought well," Elias said. "I was terrified," Jurl replied. "So was I," Elias said. Jurl blinked. "You didn't look like it. That's the trick. Myths don't bleed on the outside." He reached down and picked up a scorched metal tag from his belt. Dog tags. Human. Old. It had 2 names on it. One scratched out. Jurl hesitated. Were they someone close? "They were everyone," Elias said. "My squad. My friends. All gone by the end of the First Vorrak War. I kept their tags. Each time someone fell, I took one. Eventually, I stopped finding room to wear them." Jurl looked away, uncertain what to say. Elias continued, voice low but steady. "You want to know the truth, Private? The one the stories won't tell you." Jurl nodded. "There's no such thing as heroes. Just survivors. The stories, they need someone to put on a pedestal so they don't have to think about the body piles. They need something perfect so they don't have to look at the real cost." "But you saved us," Jurl said. "I didn't save anyone," Elias replied. "We saved each other. I just happened to live long enough for people to forget how many I lost." Mythos hovered behind him, silent. Gralthek stepped into the tent, arm in a sling. "Command is sending reinforcements. But they want to see you, Drake. Personally." Elias didn't move. "They want to parade the Specter," Gralthek added. "Make sure morale spreads to the outer systems. People are afraid again." "They should be," Elias said. "This war isn't over. The Vorrak adapted. They'll come back stronger. Next time, myths won't be enough. Then we'll make new ones," Gralthek said. Outside, the soldiers had started gathering. A memorial was being held. The coalition flag hung at half-mast. Creel's name was etched onto a stone slab beside dozens of others. Jurl stood at the back, watching. He clutched a small metal shard in his claw, the remains of Creel's detonator. He didn't cry, not because he didn't want to, because he couldn't. The war had burned that out. Elias stepped forward as the crowd parted. He stood before the stone, head bowed. "Most of you didn't believe in the old stories," he said, his voice carrying. "Some of you still don't. That's fine. Myths are comfortable lies. But what happened here was a myth. It was real. It was pain. It was sacrifice." He looked at the faces, Qatari, Vorrak, Yulari, and more. "I've fought for decades. I've lost more than I remember. But I've never stood with a braver force than this one. You held the line when it would have been easier to run. You made the myth real. And now the Vorrak remember us. Not as prey, but as monsters in the dark." There was no applause. Just silence. Heavy. Real. Later that night, Elias prepared to leave. Mythos uploaded final reports. The Specter was needed elsewhere. Word didn't wait. Jurl approached as the dropship whirred to life. "I'm going to keep fighting," the young soldier said. Elias nodded. "Then fight smart. And fight angry." Jurl hesitated. "Will I see you again?" The red visor lowered into place. If you do, things are probably worse. He stepped onto the ramp. Just before the hatch sealed, Elias turned back. Remember this. Myths make you feel safe. Truth makes you ready. Don't chase legends. Become one. Then he was gone. Jurl stood alone in the wind, watching the black ship vanish into the stars. The Specter was no longer just a story. He was the warning the Vorrak would never forget. And now, so is Jurl.